Welcome to the Divine Lifestyles Podcast. I'm your host, Tara Magalski. Together with my guest experts, I cover topics ranging from cutting-edge healing modalities to hormonal harmony, to nutrition and plant medicine, to mindfulness and spirituality. My goal is to educate and inspire so you can create your own divine lifestyle. It's time to dive inward, rewire your brain, and heal from the inside out. Hey, beautiful soul fam. Please join Divine Lifestyles for a transformative and empowering women's healing retreat, October 16th through 22nd in Mexico. It's going to be a 6-night, 7-day experience that is designed to uplift your spirit, help you transcend trauma, and lead you towards a life of a renewed freedom and empowerment. Nestled in a serene and tranquil oasis, this amazing property in Cien Can provides the perfect sanctuary for you to nurture your body and embark on a journey of self-discovery, renewal, and of course, rejuvenation. Learn more at divinelifestyles.com/transcendence. Oh, goodness. Welcome to the Divine Lifestyles Podcast. I'm your host, Tara Magalski, and today I am joined by the famous, legendary New York City acting teacher, playwright, and director, John Dapolito. In 2003, he founded the Acting Niche Phenomenon, which we're going to dive into all about, but it's a career development strategy for professional actors and artists using energy techniques to develop meaningful careers. If you hear some noise, it's just New York. We're just going to vibe with it. It's Hell's Kitchen, New York.
It's Hell's Kitchen. Keeping it real.
Keeping it real. John also has, I can attest to all of the wisdom that this man is bringing into the world. I'm going to give you guys just a little bit of a snippet, and then I'm going to put all of his credentials inside the show notes so you guys can check it out. But he has been a pioneer in my eyes in the acting world, and he has developed the Actable-Phrase, which is a technique and script secrets for the A-list actor. But again, like I said, he's done all these amazing things within the entertainment world. But today, I really, really want to spend the time talking more to the man, the legend, the truth seeker, the wise sage, John Dapolito.
I can't live up to that. All right, cut. That's it. We're out. I can't. Hey,
so that's what? Yeah, no. So this is kind of, John and I have a very, very long history, which we're never going to be able to cover this in 1 hour. We're going to have to break this interview, like we said, up into like 1 to 4 parts.
Yeah.
But it's just so robust, the amount and depth of wisdom that we have to talk. John, I was this morning. Oh, this is so funny. They're really doing a lot of construction.
Honestly, I can just say to the audience here, never are there electric saws around my apartment, but today there are. So just consider it's meant to be. Like it's a New York vibe. It's meant to be.
It's a New York vibe. So John, I ask you, do you want to maybe reschedule it on a day when there aren't the saws?
No, let's do it. I think we should do it.
Okay.
I do it because I don't know why they're doing this. So my feeling is like, if I rescheduled, I don't know what will happen that day. There could be fire engines coming down the block. Yeah. So.
All right, we're going to roll. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to have to do parts of this. I want to make sure that the audience really can hear what we're saying.
Yeah.
But we're going to vibe. And you know what? And if anything, we'll reshoot it if in post it's not working. We'll just reshoot it. But so like I was saying, I don't even really know where to begin. I was actually this morning just really, it was like very emotional. I was just sitting in front of the computer kind of going, wow, like, all right, where do we begin? And I thought we could begin with me just sharing a little bit about our history and how we know each other. And then I thought it would be really nice for us to dive into a little bit about your story. And then we're just going to see what we can get covered today.
Yeah. Sounds good.
So John and I, when did we meet? 2026?
Well,
I'm sorry, 2006. I don't know why I'm making everything present. We met in, mom died 2008. We must have met 2006 or 2007.
first time I remember meeting you, if you recall this, was at Maggie Flanagan's studio. She was
Mm-hmm.
having a holiday party,
Yes,
I think.
yes, she was.
And I'd always been friends with Maggie. I'd heard about the party. I thought, let me drop down there and just pop in for 10 minutes and say hello. So I did that because obviously there's a bunch of people around and I don't want to take up her time. But I bopped in, said hello, and then I headed over to the elevator, and you were there and I was there, both you and I just waiting for the elevator on the way down.
Yes. Yes, no, I
And
do.
I only remembered that, if you remember, then later on when we re-met was kind of like a year later or more.
Yeah.
And then I think I returned one day out of kind of a absolute shock when I went, we've met before. And you were like, when? And then I described the moment and you were like, yeah, oh my God, that was you.
Yeah.
It just came over me. And that was, I have to say, that was one of the few times in my life where I always wonder in New York City, how many times were you on the same subway car with someone? How many times did you walk down the same block but on opposite directions? How many before you finally connected with the people you're supposed to connect with? Like, I always have thought about this kind of sliding door film concept, right? This idea of that the people who are supposed to be in your life, they're orbiting you already. But if you're not heads up looking and kind of tuning in, you might miss it. What was funny at the elevator is I remember thinking, she's an interesting person. And then as you were coming down the elevator, like, you don't like, as a man in an elevator with a woman who's by herself, I want to be very respectful of that space. It's confined. You're alone. I'm alone. It's, so I said to myself, if she's walking in the same direction as I am when we get out of here, I'm going to kind of engage her a little bit more. You went left, I went right. It was just the way it was going. And I was like, I guess that wasn't happening. But then I'm trying to remember the actual second time we would have met. It
I
was
think was
through Sam.
something, I was going to say it was some gathering
Yes, it was.
for
It was a
your
theater
class.
gathering at the Players Theater. I think Sam invited you. You knew Dominic.
Mm-hmm.
And Dominic was one of my great friends. He was dating Samantha. Samantha was working with you, I think, right?
Yeah.
And then you were there, and then you did one of the funniest things. I still tell people this story.
Oh
I
God.
say, so Tara's across the room, and I text Sam. I go, who's this girl you're talking to over there? The one with the hair, blah, blah, blah. And Sam says, this one right here, blah, blah, blah. Oh, that's Tara, blah, blah, blah. And then, so I say, is Tara single? And she says, she's about to be. And I was like, she's about to be? What is that? What does that mean? So something was going on in the air that I didn't personally know about. And so I said, whatever. I just kind of steered away. And I was talking to a group of people, and then you kind of wandered over because everybody was mulling and getting into each other's conversations. And then I said to you, what do you do? And at that time you said, oh, I'm an actress. I'm also a foot model. And I said, a foot model? These must be some feat. And you were like, yeah, well, you tell me the whole thing about size 6 and this, that you got to be a 6 to be a foot model, blah, blah, blah. And there was a group of people, like 12 or 15 people. I go, and not thinking you would do this, I said, well, I got to see these feet because this sounds like a pretty hot shot thing. And you all of a sudden take your boot off, take your socks off, and you're like showing your feet around. And I was like, all right, this chick's pretty cool. And that was my second time meeting you. It was a foot show.
There you go. And then the rest is history, which we'll tell you all about. So oddly enough, the gardeners, I think, are just arriving at my house and they're doing
Honestly,
a
I can't hear your gardeners, so I don't know if your audience can because I'm not hearing them on this side.
Okay, good. Let me know when they start to, because they're due to come on Thursdays. So
We're good because I'm not hearing them.
all right, amazing. So let's get to the good stuff.
Okay.
So we meet, we start dating.
Hmm.
We date for we're giving you guys a condensed version of this story. For just under a year, right? It was just about under a year.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
when what you're talking about, but before the event,
before the event, we'll refer to
I
it
don't
as
know how long it was before the event. I want to say I don't know if it was a full year yet. I don't know if
almost,
I don't
it
know if
was
it
like
was.
maybe 8, 9 months.
It was a. We were definitely in it a little bit for sure, and as I recall it, I remember you and I were talking a lot about our relationship at that time. It was Memorial Day weekend. We were deciding as kind of mature adults at a restaurant, so what do you think? Is this working? Is this not working? We were kind of having that conversation. And then I think we concluded at that restaurant that we were probably heading in different directions in life.
Yes, because remember, I really had the itch to go to California.
There was a lot. Yeah, there was a lot. There was just like we were just at slightly like we got along very well, but we were at different spaces. And it was very clear that we were just at different kind of spaces. But what's interesting is I know, like you probably know, or I definitely know in hindsight, that I feel like I was really supposed to be present for what was about to happen.
Yes.
And so I'll let you take the stage on that because that's really yours.
Well, actually, I think I've shared my story so much.
Okay, you
I
prefer that
think
I
it would
talk about
actually
it?
be more
Okay.
interesting to hear it from your perspective.
Okay.
And
So
I also think that you have a much more eloquent perception. Remember, I was in the thick.
yeah,
Um,
it was
and it took me so many years to be able to put words to what I was experiencing.
yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot. So there's a lot of perspectives that I have on this that are multidimensional perspectives on it. As even though I am an acting teacher, saying this out to your audience, most people know me as very much in the spiritual realm. All my plays are about God, spirit, multi-dimension, multi-lives, how energy works, what's going on with people. This is my bent, my
It is.
primary bent. So Tara and I are at the restaurant. This is really kind of quite maturely deciding what our fate would be, having a normal conversation over dinner, like, hey, are we working, darling? What do you think? Kind of like that kind of thing. And we were definitely deciding that we should probably go in different directions because of the way our desires at that time. And but for whatever reasons, you ended up at my apartment that night, and your friends notoriously love to call you at all times in the morning, like 4, 5, 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. And all of a sudden I hear your phone ring and I was like, oh my, I think I even said out loud, oh my God, these friends just have to stop. They just have to stop. And you grab your phone thinking it's one of your friends because that's the normal, right? And you grab the phone and all of a sudden I hear in my quasi dead sleep, no, no, no.
Yeah.
And I know it was, I'm giving a Zoom version of no, no, no. It was quite primal. And I hear you take the phone and just wing it across the room to the other end and I hear the phone just go boom, 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 boom. And then you did something that is probably one of the most important things that anyone ever did. And it
Mhm.
was primal and it was beautiful and it was needed because it was the first moment of healing. You physically were throwing yourself up in the air and then down to the floor on your knees. like almost like a shamanist ritual around a fire. And you were just going, now, now, and literally like allowing your body to exit all the pain, exit all the
Yeah.
trauma, exit all the pain. And you were allowing your body, and this went on a lot, like a lot
John,
more.
you're watching. And by the way, John is just holding beautiful space.
Yeah,
And
I let her. I didn't get involved in that. I knew that that needed to happen, and it was just intuitive, right? So that's happening. I go get your phone because I'm thinking, is her phone shattered? Who called? What? I don't know what has happened yet. But I go to grab the phone and the phone rings again. I just decide to answer your phone, which I had never done. Obviously, I'm not that much of a rude person, but because this was going on, I grabbed the phone, and it turns out to be your brother-in-law had called you, and he was very calm, and he just said,
yeah.
"John, I'm just calling back. I heard Tara. I don't know what she's able to tell you, but her mom's passed away. We think her mom is dead."
Mhm.
And I remember it was a think, we don't know. It was something along those lines. And that obviously everything just made sense at that moment. And and you were still in kind of like a place. Then you grabbed the phone, you screamed, no, 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 again into the phone. You threw the phone again. And then you went back into this kind of like literally like a very physical ritual, which I knew in that moment that needed to happen because that was just too much information, right? I also knew at this point I have to get Tara home, and I have no idea how to get this person home, which was upstate,
Yeah.
um, because you are literally in the middle of a kind of deep, deep primal ritual, and you are devastated simultaneously. There's two things happening. There's some natural instinct that's taken over of how to start healing and digesting and exiting pain out of your body. And at the same time, you're going to need to be around your loved ones, your beloved family, right? You didn't, you know, you didn't listen to anyone. You didn't, you weren't listening. Like, and you were fighting. You were like, you were very colorful in how much you were defying me every step of the way. Um, and
Yeah.
it was, but to be understood, I mean, I didn't take any of it personally. Like, I mean, I knew you were full of pain and suffering, and like you wouldn't put a seatbelt on. I don't care. Nothing's worse.
Oh, I
And
know.
and
I know.
I kept saying we
Yeah,
have to
you
have.
know that I had so much trauma that I had so much trauma that was moving through my body. This is why I do trauma work, right?
Yeah,
Um, I thank God that I was able to kind of move some of it because
yeah,
it did help me
yeah.
later, but I blacked out.
Oh yeah, you were in a state.
Blacked out.
Yeah, you were in. You know,
That's never happened to me. I was blacked out. I don't
yeah. It was
remember.
too. It was too big. It's an overwhelming. Let me insert a perspective that I have had for many, many years, and I know we only referenced it recently, you and I. So for me, now that I'm 59 and I'm able to kind of look back over my life and I'm able to kind of see where the markers were of my own life and events that seem fated, inevitable, and that's just part of my paradigm in this life. And everybody has this. It's no matter what age you are, even if a 15-year-old's listening to this, they can look back over their 15 years and kind of see the certain markers. And obviously, with more age, you see certain markers, like, and you can recognize there's certain fated moments. So I recognized that that was a fated moment for us as spirits, right? So my perspective on it was, it didn't matter how we were friends or not, or dating or not. I was supposed to somehow be around this event.
Yes.
And because it's just odd that I was the only person who was around in that event, right? I mean, you have tons of family, tons of friends, and so on and so forth. So it wasn't like Why was it me? Now, of course, I was on my own spiritual journey from a long time, but I felt that this was a marker. And in that marker, I was supposed to be present, because what I've come to learn is that when people are going through major, shocking events, they choose who's going to go through that with them, who will be a part of that passage. And again, each person's learning. So it's not like someone's not the learner, someone's the teacher. It's not that clean. So it's like, I'll be there because I've already been through that and I know what that is. And then you're saying, okay, you be there because you can learn this from it and I can learn this from it. And you already know. So I'll be comfortable because you know that space. And so there's agreements. Carol Ann Miss calls them sacred contracts, right? But there's these agreements that we have without question. And the more you're deeply in tuned into yourself, you start to recognize the agreements kind of right away as they're occurring. So when that moment was happening, it was just very clear to me, like, okay, I have to get her to her family safely. This is not going to be easy. She's in a state, I understand it. But we have several hours to travel. And it's an early Tuesday now. It's like 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning. And let's figure this all out. And then it's wild. You don't want to put on, not to be too graphic here, but you don't want to put on clothes. I'll dress the way I want. I'll walk out the door like this. I mean, it was all this kind of rebellion, and it's just like nothing mattered. I don't care. It was all this kind of releasing. Just releasing. You were just releasing. It didn't matter. It wasn't about the clothes, and it wasn't about the seatbelt, and it wasn't about the getting from point A to point B. It was just like, I have to release. I have to say these aggressive things. I have to say these defiant things in order to start exiting the pain out of my body. I have to bang the floor. I have to bang the pillows. I have to do all of this kind of stuff so that I can, send the trauma out into the world and away from me. Right. And then every once in a while, you'd kind of like snuggle for a little second, and then all of a sudden,
glimpses.
Yeah,
glimpses.
Yeah, and then you'd come back online with duking it out. Yeah, duking it out with the world, and all understandable because you were going through an event that, quite frankly, you don't want to watch too many people go through. As a person who was an eyewitness to the moment, watching someone get blindsided by bad news from about someone they just love so tremendously is a wild moment to be a part of. It's heavy because that person is just being slaughtered in the moment. You're watching someone get slaughtered. Their whole world concept is being destroyed. And then the question is, can you, as you said, hold enough space for them so that they can see that it's okay, how they're behaving is okay, and it's allowed. I remember at one point you said to me, like, you demanded that I say something. I don't know if you recall this. You were like,
I was so abusive. I know that.
No, you just like, say something. What do you have? I was like, and I was just, there's nothing to say.
Okay. I remember you saying that.
That's right. There's nothing to say. There was just, you have to hold space at that time. There's nothing to say. You're safe, and you're trying to hold that space for that person at that moment. And of course, you wish that there was some magical word that could be put in the air, but you just say, maybe the best thing you could say is, it's all okay. You're safe. There's nothing to be said now. And just holding the space for that. But that kind of silence can also be alarming, right? Because most people, so here's the juxtaposition of life. Most people cannot sit in silence. It's too loud for them. Sitting with breathing work, sitting with, shamans, sitting at retreats, sitting, all this kind of being, like A lot of people like, oh, yeah, I'll go on a silent retreat with 12 other people, right? But that's a lot of energy, and there's a lot more communication going on than you realize, right? Because there's silent communication, a gesture, a hum, a cough, whatever. There's communication that's going on. But when you're spending time with just yourself, the silence is quite loud. And if you haven't had a lot of time in that space, it can be really, really alarming, especially when you're in the midst of the kind of crazy tragic trauma that you went through, which was really real. And I would just like to say, to all of your listeners, it was really quite amazing for me to watch Tara develop this divine lifestyles, because I know that this was the seeds that was coming out of this moment. So having known this moment, and her talking early on about what she was going to do about all of this and sharing that with me, I thought, oh, that's so fantastic. And then watching Tara go on to develop it and to really see it through was so magnificent, because some people talk the game but don't actually deliver the game, right? So watching you go through that event, manifest something really, really positive and beautiful for others in the world out of that event, was an incredible thing for me, because again, I'm a witness to the entire journey, to see where it started, and that it was true wreckage, and your world did cease for a moment. Your whole not known world was not ever going to be the same again. And all of a sudden, here we are, a little bit of time later, so to speak, in terms of the whole concept of time. And there's this beautiful woman who's helping all these great people and helping people through their own. Your mantra is your mess is your
Let your
message,
mess be
right?
your message.
Let your
Yeah.
mess be your message. And I remember you talking about that, like even that phraseology way back, way back. So the
Yeah.
fact that you kind of held on to it and brought it to people is a really, really special and beautiful thing to witness. And I know for myself that I had always hoped that road for you, because there's just great riches there, right? They're unspoken riches that our culture doesn't necessarily, advocate. We live in America, and America has a different kind of cultural perspective on what wealth and riches really, really look like. And then here, but the soul needs to be enriched. The soul needs to have this continuous dialogue with the spirit that just is there, and it needs to have fun with it too, and it needs to be playful, and all can't be serious, and all can't be trauma, and all can't. It's play is important. Play is important. It helps to heal. It helps to, oh, there's people I can play with. There's joy in the world. There's still just having fun with someone can change your whole dynamic of your life. So it's not always about sitting in a lotus position and crossing your legs and going deep within. Sometimes it's just like, let's go play.
Yeah.
Let's just go play, and keep it that simple. Let's just go play. Let's talk about a healing like this right now is healing.
This is so healing. You don't even know how healing this is for me. And I'm just so emotional. I'm also doing IVF right now. So I'm
Gotcha.
currently really, really, really emotional.
Yeah.
But you know what? It is what it is.
Yeah.
7 rounds of IVF later, we are here. We are ready. We are vulnerable.
And listen, I want to bless you with that, because I would just like to say to you, and maybe other people who know you, I have always known, and I know I've said this to you all the time. It's unfathomable to me that you would not be a mother. Like, it seems so natural to me that you're a mother. So, my blessings on that. My
It's
blessings
coming.
on that.
It's coming. That's a whole nother episode where you and I can dive into that. That's been its own journey in itself, which has actually been interesting because I would love to dive into a little bit more of just like your healing journey as well. But this fertility struggle that I've experienced the past 5 years has been this reopening and a re-deepening of the layers of work that I've been doing. You know, it's been now, it's going to be, I think it's 17 years, right, John?
Yeah.
This,
Yeah.
like in a month, it's going
Yeah.
to be 17 years as we
Yeah.
refer to the event.
That's right. Because it's coming up on Memorial Day. Yes. Yeah.
And I just think about like where I've come, what I've gone through, and just the ups, the downs. And I'm finally, John, finally really stepping into the medicine woman of what I'm actually bringing into the world now.
Yeah.
It's taken this long, but I'm finally like, I've gathered the tools, I've gathered the wisdom.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, I've arrived. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
this has been here this whole time.
Yeah.
Like just ready and right. It just feels ripe.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
Right. It was clearly one of the decisions that you made as an incarnate soul, saying, I'm going to go through the mother journey, and I'm going to go through that. And there's this guy who's a very, very spiritual guy that I'm going to want to strangle, because, I'm not there yet. Right. So he's having conversations with me in a way that I don't want to even hear it. I don't, blah, blah, blah. There's resistance. But because that person happens to be there, and all of a sudden it helps to, because it's not definitive. You have to make the decision. You're the spirit, but it helps to set the course in a particular direction, and, just something that's really, really weird. And a lot of people don't know this and would never be able to put this together. So when I was much younger, and I've talked to you about your uncle who was the priest, right?
Yes.
And the 60 minutes. So I'm watching 60 minutes. I see this 60 minutes episode. It's like a full hour episode, if I'm not mistaken, on this priest in Jamaica. And I am taken by this episode, like in a way where I can't stop watching this episode. And I'm not at that time, because I would have been much younger when that episode was launched. And I start leaning into 60 minutes and this priest and the way that he was living his life and talking about, he was just very honest, and he was very Irish and very honest, and he wasn't with an accent, but I always want to put an accent on it because he was so honest with Jamaica, you just want to have this thing but he was very honest about his journey as a spiritual man into the priesthood and so on and so forth. And it turned out that man was your uncle. And I got to meet your uncle, ironically, at your mother's wake and funeral. And I'm meeting him, and then he's sitting next to me, and he says, oh, and we end up talking spirituality literally for hours. We're just sitting at the table, and everyone wants to hang around your uncle because he's the priest and he's back in town, and everybody's looking to get blessed. And, he's like, hey, you got it, but him and I are really engaged. We're having a nice conversation. And then all of a sudden he says, just as an aside, he says, well, they did a 60 minutes thing at one point in time. It's very old now, blah, blah. And I went, oh, that's you. And then all of a sudden, so there was this other connect, right? So you start having these bizarre these connect the dot moments. And it all started to make a lot more sense to me, because by that time, as you know, I had already been very, very deep in how energy patterns are working, what's the power of energy patterns, what you can do with energy patterns if you start to understand them and to harness them for yourself, and that you can literally kind of like get on that wave and start to surf it for your life. It doesn't have to be all difficult. It doesn't have to be all Sisyphus pushing the rock up the hill. Sometimes you can just get on the escalator, and just take that nice ride up. And I think too often we associate our journeys with struggle. We associate our journeys with difficulty, and we're not when we're not associating it with, like, get into the play of the wave, get into, like, surf it. But you have to know, like any good surfer, you have to be able to look, sit on the board, and then pick a wave. You have to
Yeah.
know that's my wave. So this alignment with oneself really is what it comes down to. Getting into alignment with oneself is such a key. And that moment in your life, like it or not like it, I mean, how could you like it? Your mother passed away, right? But was without question a decision to get in alignment. Like, and you made the decision, Tara, like you did. It's all you, because you stayed the course. And here you are with this work, and it's incredible. It's honestly, talk about rising, a phoenix rising from the ashes. I mean, it's truly incredible. And then your motherhood, when you become a mother, it'll be another transformation in that whole cycle of, now I am the mother and now this is my child, right? So that transformation will also come, and it'll have another epiphany associated with it, and you'll be even closer to your mother at that moment in time, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, oh, goodness. I'm just really, I'm going to just cry again, but it's been, I don't think I've ever really just told you how thankful I am. I don't know if I've ever really expressed that.
Well, you haven't. I always thought you were mad at me. I always,
I was mad at
I remembered it
everyone.
as, yeah, you were mad at everybody, but I always remembered you as being mad. You know, you're upset because it was a difficult, what people don't understand, it was a really difficult year for you. Not to say that it wasn't 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, but that first year was incredibly difficult for you.
Yes.
Incredibly difficult. Your whole house of cards had come crashing down.
Yeah.
And because I was around, I was someone that you could feel, you got comfortable,
Yeah.
lashing out and feeling comfortable lashing out, which is fine. Look, I don't carry it on me, you know. I don't carry it on me. I mean, we wouldn't be here if I did, right? I don't carry it on me. Um, I kind of understood that it needed to go that way. I've told the story to other people. Like, you don't, like, when people have come to me for advice on their marriages, their relationships and whatnot, one of my big things is like, you don't really know how to hold, you're not holding space very, very well, you know? Just let the people, like, not everything needs a comment. Not everything needs you. People are going through things that have nothing to do with you,
Yeah.
including your wife, including your husband, including your children. They're going through things that really have nothing to do with you. It's their spiritual journey. And the best you can do is hold space. Now, this doesn't mean walk all over me. I'm not suggesting to be walked all over, but only you decide that you've gotten walked all over, right? Like, I can decide I'm going to hold space for people that I care about, like my nephews and my nieces when they're acting out. I'm just holding space. I'm not taking any of these crazy things that they're saying about me personally. You're mean. You won't let us do anything. We never have fun with you. Like all that kind of stuff. But they're just acting out. I'm not taking any of it personally, right? So now, if I decide, or if I engage the personal at that point in time, if I engage the personal and suddenly I've taken that into my spirit and onto my energy,
Yeah.
now that's my choice. That's my choice that I took that on. Was it because that I needed something from them? Was I looking for something special from them? Did I need recognition from them? Was I getting love from them? And now that they're mad at me, I'm upset. And so I've taken this on. Like, there's a lot that you can do as an individual at that moment. I saw you from, I mean, talk about everybody's learning. I mean, you were one of my great lessons in, you cannot take a bunch of things personal.
Yeah.
Like that was one of my lessons. Like, you cannot take other people's trauma and difficulties personal. Like, you cannot. You can
Yeah.
learn to hold space for it. You can learn to hold space for people going through difficult times, and they're going to sometimes say difficult things to you and about you, but they don't really mean it. They're just like, they got to get some of that pain off. And you happen to be around, you
Yeah.
know? And
Well,
so
thank
it's like,
you.
well, I'm not going to, there's sharing and then there's lashing out. And it's the same thing. And if we could just understand that sometimes to share, like, oh, it was such a difficult time in my life, or like, I hate you, I hate you, I don't, you're not my mom, you're not my mom. And kids do this kind of thing, and you're like, they're lashing out. It's they don't mean it. That's the way they're trying to share that emotional space right now with the information that they have. We don't have all the words to express the depth and the
Yeah.
impact. There is no poem written that says, here's the description of your mother being snatched from your life, because you talk to your mother every single day. That's
Yeah.
what a lot of people don't know. Like, you and your mom were like chatty patties. Yeah, yeah, I'm doing this, blah, 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 blah. Text,
Yeah.
text, text, chat, chat, chat. I mean, it was a close relationship. And so to have that suddenly just go, woof, unplugged was a lot, was a real.
Yeah. And you know what, around the circumstances that surrounded it too, which then made that next year very difficult to process
Yeah,
because it was the combination and accidental overdose.
yeah,
Remember, it was suicide. There was that. There were like all these thoughts and things that
yeah,
I needed to process. And I didn't have the language and I certainly didn't have the tools. But my angels and my soul strategically had you positioned in my life to at least help guide me
yeah,
enough
yeah,
to where I had some footing.
yeah.
Because I tell you, John, when I look back now with the perspective that I have now, after the many years of work that I've done, where would I have been
I don't know.
if you
It could have
hadn't
gone. It
been
could
there?
have gone bad. It
Could
could have
have,
gone bad.
right? It's like sink or swim.
Oh yeah, a lot of people end up in real, like, I'll, like, my father went through what you went through, but he ended up in a really bad place. So here's the interesting echoed experience for your audience, right? So when I'm 3.5 years old, my uncle Jimmy, who's 25 at the time, gets accidentally electrocuted while he's working for the telephone company and is instantaneously dead before he even hits the ground. He blew off a telephone pole, and the coroner said he was dead before he hit the ground. My father's 27 at the time. I'm 3.5.
Same age as me. I was
You
27.
were
Did you
20.
ever know?
Yeah.
Did we just?
Oh, believe me,
Wow.
I know it's an echo. Yeah. So that event is what I call in my work the ground zero event of my life. Now, we know what your ground zero event is. We don't have to get into that because we did that work years ago. But
And I do want to talk about that too.
okay, we can talk about it. So ground zero events, for me, was this moment that my father left because of his brother. But my father went the whole different road. He went deep into addiction, became a heroin addict, an alcoholic, an ex-con, in and out of jail all the time, and abandoned the family, yada, yada, yada. And his life just tanked and ultimately led him to shared needles, AIDS, and then ultimately died of AIDS quite young at the age of 51. So that journey was also a potential for you, right? Not saying that you would have done the same exact things, but in other words, there are dark forces out there that when you're vulnerable, there's temptations coming in many ways. Do you want to come to the light, or do you want to go deeper into your darkness? Do you want to be drawn deeper into your sorrows, or do you want to be drawn towards healing and light and love and beauty and sharing and the expanse? Which way would you like to go? So it is quite critical that I have a personal mantra that I use when I'm going through very, very difficult markers. And what I say to myself to help me is, and this is big things, right? Whatever this has done to shatter my heart, may it shatter my heart wide open so that my heart is larger for the world and for the expanse of the universe. This way, when I'm taking on the difficulty, which we all have in the human experience, when I'm taking on the difficulty, it's directed towards the light so that the burden of the difficulty is less. Because if I'm taking it on towards the light, if I'm taking it on to expand, if I'm taking this heart-wrenching, crushing moment on, it's to make my heart bigger and wider into the universe. And I literally say that to myself as the event is occurring, like simultaneously in the event. I've lost my mother. I've lost people that are dear to me. I've lost relationships that are dear to me. All of this matters. And that turn of event for you was there was definitely some forces around you that could have easily pulled you further and further into problems that you wouldn't have wanted, added on problems on top of problems. And luckily enough that there was enough there where, I was getting in your ear a little bit with the things that you were curious about, and then quite frankly, you found Jesus, like literally.
I mean, that literally, I'll never forget it. I was on the floor of my apartment and I was literally, and this was, gosh, there is no timeline, right? I don't even remember the timeline. It's within that first year. And I remember going, I'm just going to walk across the street right now and not look both ways. Like I would do that like
That's
a
heavy. Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
I would do it. Like I would just test. I'd be like, come on, let's try this.
Yeah.
And I would just see. That's like where I was at vibrationally.
Yeah.
That's how low I was.
Yeah.
That was the mentality. And I was, my personality back then. I was rebellious. And I was like, fuck you, universe.
Yeah.
Fuck you, everybody. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
Take me out. Come on, try me.
Yeah.
That's how I was really moving through the world. And I was literally one day just on my hands and knees in Carol Ann's apartment. God rest her soul. She passed 2 years ago. And I was like, you know what? I just don't want to do this anymore. I didn't have the courage to really kill myself and like jump off of a bridge. Yeah. I could walk across the street and take my chances, right. But I didn't really have the courage. I wasn't doing pills. I wasn't doing any of that. Yeah. Right.
Good.
I wasn't slitting my wrists. None of that was happening, but I was going to make very bad decisions. So I just kind of like threw it out to God in the universe. And I was like, listen, I just need to know like right now, what is it that I'm here to do in the world? Because if I don't have a clear sign of what it is that my soul is here to do, I'm telling you, I will walk in front of the bus until it hits me. That I will do. So I was negotiating. You either come and tell me right now, or in 15 minutes, I'm going to go across the street to that stupid fucking diner and the 14th Avenue bus might be coming. Mm-hmm. And like, this is literally where I was. I was hysterically crying. I'm on my hands and knees. Yeah. And John, boom, outer body experience. Light comes into the room. Spirit starts to engulf me. Call it God, call it angels, call it whatever it is, right? At the time, I didn't have the words, Jesus, whatever, right? I was born with Jesus, but what is Jesus? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what does it all even mean?
Sure.
I just felt the spirit of angels or God or energy of light, of love, just encapsulate me in the room and literally take me. It was like I was actually like picking up from the floor. I sat on my bed and there was a ray of light that just shone through the window, coming through my curtains. So what did I do? I sat on my bed. My tool, I opened the Bible. I said, what is this? I hear divine lifestyles. This is what you're here to do. Divine lifestyles. Very clear. This is like a full outer body moment, right? And I'm like, thank you. Okay. I'm getting the messages. This is very clear. I'm like, my heart is blasted open. I'm feeling this eternal love, this infinite love that I can't describe. And I'm like, calm. a calm washes over me, and I just have a deep knowing. I really don't logically know what any of this means,
Mm-hmm.
but I just know in my soul. And that was the beginning.
Yeah.
And that
I
was the
remember
beginning.
you mentioning divine lifestyle, the term divine lifestyles at some point in time. I don't remember exactly when it was, but I remember the term and I thought, good, good, good term, good language.
But Jen, I still didn't even know. Like I was like, because it was given to me by
Yeah.
spirit. And
It's
I
just a
was like,
seed. Yeah. Yeah.
what is divine lifestyles? It's living fully in alignment with your soul's blueprint. Okay. Living in co-creation with spirit, with God. Okay.
Mm.
Like help me to live like so it's taken me this
Yeah.
many years to even articulate like,
It takes a
oh,
while,
I'm
doesn't it?
sure to just find my divine lifestyle living fully in alignment with spirit. Oh, and I can empower others to do the same.
Mm.
Okay. Well, how the hell do I do that? You know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's not, look, alignment with the spirit is tricky business, because what does that mean? Like, how are we defining in that? How do we know that the the toughest thing for us to grasp is that it's it's not going to come to us as knowledge. It's going to come to us as experience, you know, and it's really difficult to understand that. A way to understand that is, I think the Buddhists do it best. So when they're trying to understand, say, well, what's the difference between knowledge and experience? Say, well, experience is a much deeper knowing, right? Because you know something through experience, and experience is acquired wisdom, right? So this is a
Yeah.
much deeper knowing that it doesn't necessarily have all the words or the framework. You don't need it. It becomes an aspect of instinct now because it's through experience and a deeper knowing. So in Buddhism, they say things like, nothing can ultimately be described because you're describing it really just to have a conversation, but you don't know what that really is. So I'll give you a little fun story about my brother driving one day, and I'm in the back seat, and his family's with him. He was married at the time. He's got his kids, and I'm in the back seat, and I'm just having this general conversation that I'm about to have with you right now and your listeners. And so talking about, well, you never really can describe anything. You never really can know anything. You have to experience everyone and everything. And so my brother goes, what do you mean you can't know it? And he's driving, he's doing his thing. And and I said, well, let's take something like an apple. I said, try to describe an apple to me. So my brother says, okay, well, it's round. I said, oh, now I'm playing the guy who doesn't know what an apple is, right? Because so I go, oh, you mean like a baseball? He goes, no, it's not a baseball. It's like a fruit. I said, oh, so it's like an orange? And he goes, no, it's not an orange. It's red. I said, oh, so it's like a cherry? And he goes, no, it's bigger than a cherry. It's about, and he holds up his hand. He goes, it's about this size. I said, okay, so it's like an orange then. No, but it's not an orange. It's red. I said, are they always red? And he goes, no, sometimes the apples can be green or yellow. I said, so like a banana. And he goes, no. And I said, Mark, don't you see? At some point, you're going to say, just take a bite.
Ah,
Because when you take
see.
a bite of the apple, now you have an experience. And in that experience is the depth of wisdom and knowledge that comes over the being. Apple.
Okay.
And now we know that there's something much deeper when we say apple. We know apple through experience. We don't know. And then we're able to have the conversation because you've experienced apple. And so I say, oh God, I love apples. Oh, me too. What are your favorite? Macintosh? What do you like? The red one? And so all of a sudden it's like that, right? And this is
Honey
every
dip
single
all
thing
day.
in life. This is all day long. This is trees. This is birds. This is dirt. This is water. This is, physical relationships. This is trauma. This is, oh my God, someone was snatched out of my life. You too, me too. And that's a
Yeah.
deep, deep knowing, right? So when
The
when people
depth fun. The depth of your trauma is the depth that you'll be able to hold for somebody else.
100%.
My dear soul sister Lulu said that to me, and I said, yes,
It's
that
100%.
explains it.
Because there's wisdom in that experience. It with the experience, and this is a very difficult thing for people to ultimately digest, because who really says, "Oh, bring on the traumas." Really, what's happening at a spiritual level is bring on the wisdom. That's what's actually happening.
Yeah.
What's happening is the acquisition of wisdom. I cannot know the apple without biting into it. And so I must have the experiences to know a depth of wisdom. And so I really have a perspective that the spirit is just, full tilt, bring me my traumas. And I'm not talking about this as an indulgent needing attention. I'm talking about this as a deep spiritual wisdom that the spirit says, there's certain kinds of traumas I've already acquired through many, many lifetimes. And there's certain traumas that I'm interested in going through in this lifetime, along with my purpose, et cetera, et cetera. And as you've pointed out, often the trauma can convert into a life purpose, a life path, as with your mother's loss, and all the wisdom that got downloaded instantaneously. But in that moment, you're not saying, "Oh, what a lovely time to get such wisdom."
Of
No, you're
course.
saying it's all about, I miss my mother. I love my mother. Why would this happen to me? What's going on here? I'm disoriented. I don't know how to process my day. I don't know why life is worth living. All of these very, very important questions, which leads to the most important question that is in the spiritual doctrines, which is, who am I?
Mm-hmm.
Who am I? And when trauma comes on our lives, it forces us into that question, because it takes the house of cards falls down, and we say, who am I if I'm not listening to your point of view about me? If your actions towards me and your point of view towards me are only yours, who am I? If the world is calling me something, who am I? And it's very, very challenging to get into that space, because we tend to live as children. We're looking at mom and dad. Tell me who I am. Tell me who I am. And we get into these kind of reward systems to kind of function in society. Tell me who I am. And it's very externalized. And at some point, somewhere along the line, whether it's through trauma, whether it's through a good teacher, whether it's good mentorship, whether it's major life events that just come crashing through, it's the bottom line will come down to, you will have to get to this question, who am I, before you speak to me? Who am I before I even speak to myself? Who is here? And that space cannot be ruined. That space has all the wisdom you're looking to offer any moment. So what your readers or listeners don't know is, I guess it was probably 5 or 6 years ago. So 5 or 6 years ago, I had just hit a small patch where I was like, well, John, you've read all this, you know all these spiritual practices, you've unraveled the riddles, blah 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 blah. So what does this come down to? Like, so I'm kind of living my life, and I'm sitting there going, like, boil this down. Like, I'm in my journal, which, by the way, is right here. I always journal. So I'm in my journal, and I said, how do you boil this down? And it boiled down to me, something that I wrote down, and I've shared with people over the years, which is, perfume the spontaneous now with grace. That this is all that needs to happen, is no matter where you are, whatever the moment, 24/7, perfume the spontaneous now with grace, which means I don't have to do anything. Being has its own floral quality. And so that perfuming, like the scent of a beautiful flower, like the scent of a beautiful garden, that perfuming is there. And the traumas that come into our life are asking us to get in touch with that so that we can start that perfuming. So divine lifestyles really is, quite frankly, the perfuming the spontaneous now with grace. I mean, I know your dog's name's Grace.
Gracie, that's
Gracie.
right.
But
Oh, and
it's
you
still,
know why, right?
no, I don't know
You
why. No.
you remember
Do I?
the first letter. Remember when I went to, you were there. I went to my mother's place, her condo, and the last thing that she wrote next to her bedside was call Grace.
Oh, wow. You know what? I don't recall that.
You don't remember
I
that?
don't
Okay,
recall. It's not
so
coming
I
back.
have it framed,
Oh, that's great. That's great.
and I've had it framed for all these
But she's
years.
spelling it
And
Grace, right? And that's how you
Grace.
spell the dog's name, Grace. So you call it Gracie. Gotcha.
I call her Gracie because it's
Gotcha.
cuter.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Gotcha.
but yes, Grace.
Yes.
And so it was always a thing for me. And I was thinking, oh, I'll name my daughter Grace. No, it's Mila May. But that's a whole other story.
Gotcha.
Milagros, which is miracle. But that Gracie was, and it was always about that one note that I found, which was
Yeah.
a reminder to herself on the bedstand to call Grace, which happened to be this woman who was her neighbor. But of
Incredible.
course, to me, it meant call
Well,
on
look at the symbolism there at call
somebody.
Grace. I mean, you at your mother's bedside, there's a note that's left, call Grace. And of
Yeah,
course it has double entendre. Anybody
yeah,
who's studied any kind of great literature, great symbolism, there's no such thing as this one singular message. When something's written well, it's a multi-dimensional message. It's not just this one flat thing. The power of a name, like you said, Milagros means miracle. The power of each of our names, the power of the name Tara, what that means in the spiritual realm. All these things. But yeah, it's very, very important that we tune into these things because they're vibrational. A name is vibrational. So you were born into the world, and intuitively, without people realizing, they were going to name you Tara. And this is a sound which is meant to symbolize the recognition of this energy in the world. And if you know the definition of Tara, then you start to say, wow, can I live up to this? Because just in and of itself. And I remember back when we were dating and I said to you, do you know the meaning of your name? And you were like, no. And I said, you should find out the meaning. You should look into the meaning of your name a little bit more. And then you were like, what? Tell me what it is. And I said, look it up. So it was a funny moment, but it is important. It is important to recognize that these sounds, they're not names, they're sounds which the reason I call it sound is because it's vibration, and that vibration has frequency. So there's a frequency that's being recognized in the name,
Mm,
in the calling of the name. So that frequency again comes down to getting in alignment, getting into surfing with the truth that came into the world. Everyone agreed, Tara. Everyone agreed, John. Everyone agreed, Michael. These are really, really important things to recognize because this energy comes into the world, and intuitively the people know this is the covenant that we have with this particular spirit, and we give it this sound. We recognize the frequency as this distinct sound, which is very, very important for the passage of that person coming into this journey, because it's not always fun. It's challenging here. It's got some real
mm.
challenges.
Gosh, there's so much I want to unpack, and we're just going to keep flowing. It's 111. Thank you, angels. That's always a note that angels are with us, my parents, our parents.
Yeah. Mine are looking down somewhere. They're like, all right, you guys have that chat. See, I knew they'd be friends. I knew they'd be friends. Even after all that, they'd
We
still
were
be friends.
always friends.
We'll always
We
be.
were always
I
friends.
know, that's true.
We just, I was young. I
Yeah.
was young. I was young and I had a lot to learn about myself, about how I wanted to show up in the world. And even I needed tools, right? I
Yeah,
needed the
yeah.
tools then. So it's
That was
one
the
thing to
that was
have a
the
desire.
key. Yeah, that was the key is tools, and it's really important for all of us, to recognize, and because some people are plumbers, some people are gardeners, some people are masons. Everyone has tools to get to the same point. Years ago, I was sitting in a restaurant with friends of mine. It was a very diversified group of people. There was probably about 20 people there, all different cultures, all different backgrounds, some people who were not born in this country. And we're all sitting around the table, and the concept of God comes up. And I'm thinking, oh boy, this is not going to go well at this table, because everyone's got this point of view and everybody's got their religions and blah, blah, blah. And I just was sitting at the corner edge of the table. And and you probably know that this is hardly even possible for me at times. But I said to myself, shut the hell up. Just shut the hell up. And Tara knows, like, that's probably not going to happen at most places. But I was like, no. I was like, just shut the hell up. I'm cutting my food. Do, do, do. And I'm not saying anything. And like an hour goes by, maybe an hour, 10 minutes go by. And finally, one of the people at the table recognized that I had not participated once. And a guy in the middle of the table goes, you haven't said much over there. I said, yeah, no, I'm listening. I didn't want to get involved because it was like getting heated and people were like, and all I said is, well, I think we're all trying to get to Times Square. And some of us are on the 7 train, and some of us on the A, some of us on the 1, some of us on the N or the R or the Q. I said, but we're all just trying to get to Times Square. Depending on where you're located, you got to grab a different train. And I went back to the food. And the guy goes, I think that ends that. Like and it was just kind of a joke moment, and it lightened the room up, and everybody was like, yeah, we're just on our own trains. And
Yeah.
we have our own tools. We're on our own trains, we're on our own tools. There's not I'm right, you're wrong. This is the silliness of it. And the
Yeah.
tools that work for Tara are the tools that are meant to be there. And the tools that work for John or whomever are the tools that are meant to be there. There's no what my tool is the tool, my train is the train. This is where things start to get silly fast. And if it's working for you, that's what's key.
I've got an exciting offer for all of my listeners. The free Divine Daily Practices video series. Get simple practices to release anxious thoughts, sharpen your intuition, and rewire your nervous system in less than 10 minutes a day. Come on over to my website at divinelifestyles.com/divine daily practices. And over the next week, you'll receive a complimentary self-care system to drop into your authentic self and activate your divine intuitive wisdom. I hope you enjoy. So let's dive into that a little bit, because I would love, you had mentioned before earlier, yes, I found Jesus. And yes, I did. And at that time, that was what I understood, right? I was raised very Catholic. I have Judaism as well. I actually did a lot of genetic testing, John. I found out that I'm like 98% Ashkenazi Jewish throughout all this fertility stuff. So that got me really like,
That's proud. That's quite beautiful. Yeah.
That's interesting because, I know that Uncle Richie used to also do the Star of David, and in his morning practices, it was always a big devotion to the Torah. So it just really got me thinking like about what I believe and what does all this mean?
Yeah.
And yes, I love Jesus and Jesus is close to me. But then I went down the whole Christian rabbit hole, which you remember those years? Probably like, Jesus jammed you a bunch throughout the years.
You definitely Jesus jammed me. Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I definitely did that. And I guess And that didn't feel great for me. Like that was a phase in which I moved through and I was like, this doesn't feel fully authentic. I love Jesus and this has been part of my path. And I have an understanding of what all this means now and what his life represents and all of that. But I don't really like what the church is doing. And I don't really like the judgment and the separation. And I don't really stand behind a lot of the ideology that is being spewed out into the world. And I don't actually like a man to sit there and tell me what I should be understanding from their revelation. It seems like I'm not really getting it from the true source, right? I want to get it directly. I like to go VIP, straight to the front of the line. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
I don't need to be getting information from somebody under their covenant. So then there was years of, that discovery.
sure.
Um, and ultimately it's an ever overwhelming discovery for me every day.
Hmm.
I don't think I've ever arrived. I don't think that I know. I do think that I've had, these amazing experiences of initiation into the spirit, which I've shared with you, and also my father's death and how I could, help him cross like a death doula. There's some part of me that like feels like death doulaing is like something I'm going to be doing more of.
Yeah,
Um, and I still don't know if I really fully understand it all, right?
yeah, yeah,
Um, but I just have to keep the inquiry and keep the authenticity of discovery of having spirit reveal more layers to me.
yeah, yeah. I get that. I get that. I think that's what I'm hearing you say is that there's just an openness. You're just open,
Yeah.
and that it's always going to be revealing. And I think that's more honest than anything, right? Is that that's all it could be. All it could be is I'm open to this moment. I mean, I know that your history originally was, rooted in a, interestingly, the practice of acting, which is moment to moment living. But there's an openness, there's a receptivity that has to happen in that moment to moment living. So I'm living. I know who I am, and I know what my plan is inside the scene and in the play, or etc. But I also have to be open and receptive to what's coming from the world around me. And so one of the great things about acting is that it's such a practice. It's a practice that if you can take the stage into life, I get that we have to reflect life on stage, but if you can also reverse it and take what you know about stage living into life. In other words, there's a tremendous amount of repetition up on stage, 8 shows a week. We've been through the scene before, but how am I approaching this new? How am I approaching this open? Am I open to this moment here that's happening, even though I've repeated it many times? I'm doing laundry again. I'm washing dishes again. I'm brushing my teeth again. I'm putting on my shoe and my pants again. I'm saying hello and good night to my husband and my wife again. So these things can become tired, or can become something that you're receptive to because you start to learn from that kind of living that in order for this show to go well tonight in front of this audience, I must be alert and open to what this player in front of me is doing so that I can really be receptive to it. And so that I, therefore, am always changed. And then it brings back to that wonderful Chinese riddle: you cannot step into the same river twice because the river's
Uh,
always flowing, right? So the
mhm.
river's always moving, it's always happening. And even though it appears to be the same river and the same moment and the same husband and the same wife and the same dishes and the same clothing, the moment is constantly changing. And so if I step into it open and keep my openness and know that that is the point, to be alert and earnestly alert in that moment, that it's going to have a freshness to it that I might not otherwise have seen. Simple.
It's so beautiful. And this is why I think your work as, and this is why I did that intro the way I did, like the legendary, masterful, like crafts and tools that you're teaching actors goes way beyond the stage. And maybe this is a perfect time. I really do want to dive into your work. And maybe we can even start with talking about how it starts, like exactly how we started working
Yeah,
together
sure.
when we went into a private session, because
Yeah.
I think that that is so, the methodology and the
Mhm.
techniques that you've created are extremely powerful. And whether you're an actor
Or just a
or
human
a
being. Yeah.
teacher,
Yeah. Yeah.
it doesn't matter. Having this information is so important to help you navigate your life.
Yeah. Yeah. I personally think so. And I know that that's been echoed back to me by, you know, thousands of people at this point who've had the experience, right? um,
Hmm.
in having the experience, it's a whole different thing than talking about the experience. Like the apple, right? If I don't have the experience, I'll never really know. So you and I know because we both had the experience. I trained somebody and they did the experience to me. So I was like, oh, and then you had the experience through me because I was the one who got lucky enough to kind of start to pioneer this work, right? And I had been searching for something to do that I thought was important with my life, and it started to come to me again through the journaling. And then I was blessed to have people to help me package it and start to put it together just in the fundamental ways of like, I'll invite some of my friends, you invite some of your friends, let's get into a room. Um, but it hinges on something that I've believed way, 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 way back. So it goes the I've always believed just intuitively, and I know this because my sister, when she was 5 years old and in kindergarten, she calls me up and she says, John, can I interview you for my class? And I was like, of course you can, So my sister, of course I was, now at that time, I was 27, because we're 22 years apart, Maria and I. So I said, of course you can. So she says, okay, so I have five, it's only 5 questions. And I don't remember any of the other 5 questions, by the way. I remember this one. And my sister and I talk about this all the time, ironically. So one of the questions, and was the last question, what do you think life is about? And I said, really nonchalantly, I said, oh, that's easy. The acquisition of wisdom. And she was like, can you spell acquisition? And that's literally how that's our memory of it, right? And but it was interesting to me because here I am 27 and I said, and I got off the phone with her and I said, wow, that's such a what a bizarre impulse, right? That just came out of nowhere. Like no one had said to me, no one had stopped me at that point at 26 or 25 or earlier that month or even 10 years earlier. What do you think life is about? My sister happened to at the age of 5, and I responded very viscerally. Oh, that's easy. It's the acquisition of wisdom. What's interesting is like I have not moved off that definition one iota, and here I am 59 years old, and it's like 30 something for 32 years later. And I even believe that more, interestingly enough, now than I did at 27 when it was just viscerally popping out of my mouth. I do believe we are here for the acquisition of wisdom, and that the acquisition of wisdom is acquired through experiences. And that doesn't mean that you have to seek out experiences. It just means that there will be experiences that already are happening from moment to moment to moment. It doesn't have to be a great big trauma any more than it has to be a great big fun event. It just means that am I staying open and receptive to this experience? It will teach me. The teacher is the moment, right? The teacher is already there. We don't necessarily need mentors. Mentors can be helpful if they're always bringing you back to the moment, back to the moment, back to yourself, back to the moment. Anytime it's overly focused on the tool, overly focused on the train, we're into kind of slightly dangerous territory because they're making the methodology more important than where it's supposed to be taking you, which is really just back to this now. and back to being present in this now. And we all know this. We all know this no matter what we do. It always gets down to, no matter who we talk to, if we're talking to legit people, how receptive are you to this now? And we all know sometimes we're in the now better than we're not. Sometimes we're like walking through the now a little bit sleepwalky. Sometimes we're really, really earnestly alert. And sometimes we're completely forgetful. We've lost an hour. We've just been distracted. It's normal. It's just, but we get back to this now, and the acquisition of wisdom is there for us to constantly just let it flow. And that's why I got to that thing where it's perfume the spontaneous now with grace, like just stay open and allow it to be. So when I started teaching this stuff and I know we'll probably end up having to do a part 2 or even a part 3, but when I started teaching this stuff through the journaling, I recognized that everyone was energy, and that this is pre The Secret, pre Oprah talking about her stuff. This is all back. And when I started talking about this stuff, people in New York, because New York wasn't particularly receptive to it, it was a lot easier to kind of sell it in LA because they're already into gurus out in LA. But in New York, people are like, what's this guy talking? He wants to help me with my acting career, and he's talking all this woo-woo stuff,
Yeah.
And people just didn't get it. People were walking out of my seminars, screaming, yelling at me. What is this? There's no goals here. What's my goal? What's my goal? Like, it was all this kind of stuff. And I just had to hold into that truth and get people to understand that we have what I call a psychological fingerprint, a meditation that the psyche meditates at a rooted place. In other words, there's lots of other things that happen afterwards, but the psyche has a rooted meditation. Now, no matter how, now I happen to know what your ground zero event is. Now, most people would say, oh man, your mother must have been your ground zero event. And I'm like, no, it wasn't. Tara's ground zero was another ground zero. John Dapolito's ground zero was when he was 3.5. And yeah, a lot of other crummy things did end up happening along the line that could have been considered markers as a ground zero, but they're not. So don't associate, I would tell your audience, don't associate ground zero meditations as the worst thing that's ever occurred to me or happened to me. What it really is the first time, an event, and here's the best definition, that your known world was just not going to be the same again. So sometimes that's as simple as I was 5 years old, I was living in Texas, and my family announced we're moving to Brooklyn, New York. And I was like, what's Brooklyn, New York? And their known life was just never going to be the same. They were going to leave their world behind. It could be I was 7 years old and they told me I was going to have a baby brother. The known world was not going to be the same.
I love the example. You have 2 examples that will always stick with me. That's part of the workshops you do. And the one with the two, I think it was 2 brothers and the father and
Oh God,
the
yes.
the gum wrapper.
Yeah. Oh,
That's such a good one.
that's such a tragedy, really. Oh,
Can you share that
yeah, I
one? Because I
will.
feel
I
like that
will.
is just like
Yeah,
sums up this book.
this is a true story, sadly enough.
Mm.
So there were the two brothers, relatively close to in age. Let's say one was like, 10 or 9 and the other was like, 8 or 7. And no, I think actually they were slightly older. It might have been like the younger one was 13 and the older one was like 15, right around their age. And he's sitting on the couch kind of in the living room, in the rec room, and he looks over into the bathroom and he sees his father reach into his pocket and hand his older brother something silvery and shiny. He just sees the reflection of it. And like it looked almost like a secret, like,
Yeah.
and he says to himself in this moment, my father loves him more than he loves me. And what's sad about the story is he starts living recklessly from that point forward. He goes typical 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. He's trying all the drugs he can. He's drinking. He's acting out. He's not coming home when they say curfew is a FU. I'll come home when I want to. And he just gets worse and worse and worse. And he literally spirals out of control into his adult life. Becomes a drug addict, gets arrested a few times, car accidents. It's a mess. He ends up in AA and DA, right? Drug Anonymous. And one of the things that kept coming up when he was in these kind of rehab centers, they would say, it seems like your issues are with your father. Why don't you go see your father? And since he's alive, try to see what's there. Try to see if you can heal it, because it'll be beneficial to you. So he does. He takes that leap of faith because he had become very estranged to his family because of all of his, shenanigans. And he gets with his father and he reveals this moment to his father that we just talked about, the shiny object. And by just some twist of fate, irony, his father remembered that moment. He goes, do you know what I handed your brother in the bathroom? Do you know what that was? I was chewing on gum and your brother asked me if he could have a stick of gum. And what you saw was me pull out of my pocket the silver sliver of a Wrigley's wrapper and give him a piece of Wrigley's gum. And his whole life just shifted on this axis because of this story he told himself of this quiet intimacy that looked like this quiet shared moment between a father and son, and his own envy or jealousy or sibling rivalry just set him off on this crazy course. And of course, it was dumbfounding to him. It was a Wrigley. My whole life became this over Wrigley's spearmint gum.
I'm not laughing, but I'm just
but it is.
Yeah,
it's tragic.
This is what we do. This is what we do.
This is what we do when we don't feel comfortable enough to just say, "Hey, Dad, do you like Tommy more than you like me?"
Yeah.
Because that's a vulnerable moment, right? It's very difficult for us to be vulnerable because we have to expose ourselves to someone, and then people can say things like, "Oh, you're very needy." I just feel you're all these attacking things when people don't know how to navigate your vulnerability, your truth. Like, every man we're with is also a boy. Every woman we're with is also a little girl. It's just the nature of life. Obama is also a little boy, Michelle Obama is a little girl. She's also a little girl. It's just like everyone has this inside them, no matter how much they're fronting all this other stuff. There are vulnerable places inside that the little child always remains there. And this ground zero stuff is very, very different from person to person to person. What's even more interesting about the ground zero is the gift that comes out of the ground zero, which is that meditation that I was talking about. So the ground zeros are only there to kind of set the gift in motion, to set the meditation in motion. And so then the person starts meditating, and this is where the acquisition of wisdom starts to get acquired on that particular lifetime meditation, which I call the acting niche phenomenon. But people also call my meditation. I know what my meditation is, blah blah blah, and I offer people ways into that and understanding that, etc.
So let's dive into that a little bit, because I actually have a question.
Shoot.
Because this has been showing up for me. You know my ground zero. I'm fine with sharing it, so we can use me as a case study.
Mm-hmm.
My ground zero, which I did not remember.
I remember that you did not remember, but then I said, well, I can kind of guide you around it and see what happens. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Do you know that it was a repressed memory?
Yes, it was. Yes.
This all happened like 2 months before my mother died.
That's
too.
right.
Because I remember calling her and sharing this with her.
Right.
So
and she remembered.
Found out. And she remembered. Right. And I needed that validation to know that this was a real repressed memory.
That's right.
So you'll probably remember more because you were doing the work I was receiving, right? So I wasn't really clocking. I was trying to not be in my head as much as I can and just like answer the questions more authentically and viscerally and not think, right? So you were I don't forget how you were kind of, you have a very interesting way with positioning the questions, and maybe you want to talk a little bit about that so people can kind of understand, because it's based in, psychology, and there's
Yeah.
like a real scientific
Yeah.
process to
Yeah.
how you
There
do
really,
it.
it really is. It's not trickery. It's,
Yeah.
first off, we live in a non-coincidental universe. It is very, very, very important to understand that we live in a non-coincidental universe. We are the creators of our universe. What's in our universe is an agreement that we have, and we're co-creators, and sometimes massively co-creators. That's multiple creations happening. And so once you understand that that's a reality, that it's not some trickery, that then you can start to understand where the person's meditation actually happens. Vibration is very important to understand, because the word bliss, which Joseph Campbell said, follow your bliss, follow your bliss, follow your bliss, it's very, very important. But what's more important to understand is, how does one follow one's bliss, right? And so you first have to discover, well, what the heck is my bliss? What do you mean by my bliss? I like chocolate ice cream and I like pizza. Should I just be eating chocolate ice cream and pizza for the rest of my life? What is being said here? And of course, it's much deeper than that. So then what you do is you ask people. What I do is I set up 9 questions, 3 parts to each question. It's 27 answers, and we get into a deep dive bibliography on that human being, each individual person. And so that deep dive bibliography is pop culture references, because it's so much easier to deal with people when they're having fun talking about their favorite movie, favorite book, favorite character in this book, all this kind of stuff. And so what you're doing, what I call it, is non-invasive surgery. So like everybody's sitting around talking about like Scooby-Doo and blah, 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 blah. And then, oh yeah, Streetcar Named Desire. So these things seem very random, right? It seems like, what the heck does Scooby-Doo and Streetcar Named Desire have in common? This guy must be crazy. This guy's crazy. There's no way this is going to work out.
Yeah.
Because they're going through all these great stories that they love. And that's why it's a bibliography, the personal bibliography. But it's a bliss bibliography, right? It's not just, here's any willy-nilly bibliography. The questions are designed to get the person into a state of their blissful recognitions. And it's very, very easy. It sounds like voodoo, but it's not. It's people have access to that all the time. What's your favorite movie? Give me one of your favorite movies. If you had a list of 50 favorite movies, would that movie show up on it? Oh yeah, I like this one. I like that one. It's very easy for people, right? And so then we go, the deep dive is the key. And that's where the work is very, very important, that, I stay healthy. I'm alert. I'm not on drugs. I'm not drinking. I get a good night's sleep, blah, blah, blah. Like, my alertness matters, because I can't have any skin in the game. I have to just be receptive at that moment. What will reveal? What will come here? So in your case, I saw what your meditation, what your bliss was, but I also recognized that there was a cover up. And I said, oh, this cover up thing is interesting. What's being covered up? And so it's always important to look into the cover up, because the person's has a kind of energy investment in keeping something covered up for some reason that we don't necessarily know, whether it was something like, oh, I was embarrassed by that, or I was shamed by that, or, oh, it was too much, I just wanted to forget it. All there's lots of different reasons that we cover up. And so I saw the cover up energy, and I said to you, do you know what your ground zero moment is? And your response, as I recall, was, no, I don't think I know what it is. It could be this. I said, do you mind if I offer some suggestions and you see if something comes popping through? So what I'll do at that moment at the ground zero, again, the session is focused on the bliss journey. But once the bliss journey is discovered, I'll ask people if they want to discuss that ground zero moment. And 99.999% of people like, oh yeah, I want to discuss it. I know what mine is, or sometimes I'm suspect between 2 events, and I'm able to kind of guide them and help them. So in your case, I remembered that cover-up energy was there, and it was covering up something that had to do with what I call sexual perversities or traumas, like something like that in that energy. Now I just know that as an energy. I don't know specific events, but I can see that there's a kind of sexual trauma or sexual perverse energy that keeps trying to be covered up. And so I'll just say, do you recall any of events that happened? Did you recall this? And I knew what age, and also how do I know what age to look under, right? So one of the phenomenons of the work, which is why it got called the acting niche phenomenon later on down the road, is that no one ever answers before their ground zero event. I mean, Tara, ever, ever. So if I say, tell me your bliss, tell me the things that excite you and light you up. Let's say your ground zero event happens at 7 and someone's happens at 5 and someone happens at 3.5, like mine did. You will not go before that. You will never talk about a bliss event before that event. So that's just
Okay, so it'll happen 3 after 5, yeah, whatever.
So what happens is I'll look at the list you gave me, the list of pop culture, and I'll say to you, what's the furthest thing back in time on the list? And usually the person say, that thing right there. Oh, that was when I was yeah, that was when I was 5. I remember reading that with my grandma or something like that, right? So then I'll say, from 5 under, might there have been some kind of event that covered a sexual perversity or a sexual trauma that you recall? And maybe it happened to you personally. Maybe you found out about it. It could be things like you stumbled upon your dad's porn stash. It could be things like, oh my God, you knew a friend of yours who was grabbed or grappled at a church event. It can be externalized. It doesn't necessarily have to have happened to you, but you would have had to have experienced it with that person and gone through it
Mhm.
with that person. More often than not, it's personalized, but often it is some other event too. So in your case, it had to do with that energy. And I remember you said, all of a sudden you were sitting on my couch and you were like you had a recall.
I literally had the memory
That's right.
come to my conscious mind
That's
right
right.
in that moment.
That's right.
I recalled it from the subconscious,
That's right.
and it was like, oh, this happened.
That's right. Yep. And
And
you had been
then I
covering it and
remember
covering.
being
So
like,
basically what we were doing in the moment, just gently tugging on the line to see if your spirit, your psyche was ready for the event to have some light. Right. And then I think I
mhm.
even said to you, because you had said, and I went to my mother right away, and my mother talked to me about this, and your mother kind of walked you through the list, right? Did this happen? Did this happen? Did this happen? Did this? And your mother handled it really great. I remember telling you, oh, your mother handled that really, really well. A lot of people would not have handled that well, but your mother did a great job with helping you in that moment and not making it about herself, which was
Mhm.
really rare. That was a rare thing to get. And so I said, oh, you were really, really lucky. You had a mother that really understood how to handle that moment. Um, and then you went and confirmed it with your mother and that the event had happened. So we knew now you had shared on the couch. Then you called up your mom, I'm sure, like when you left the apartment, like, mom, blah, 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 blah. And
Yeah.
she affirmed that it did happen and that these were not just some fantasy memories, that they were actually true recall of events. So quite powerful.
What I what I find so interesting with this is that the cover up part,
Mhm.
because you can have this happen, right? And this was a trauma that I clearly repressed.
Right.
And I always ask myself, why did I repress this? But if you remember, I think I shared with you that it was such a big deal in the neighborhood because it was a
Yep.
young boy who was directly across the street from my house.
Yep.
And he was a little bit mentally unstable.
That's right.
And after I told my parents this, I remember my father being so angry. And I remember never seeing that boy again. And I thought, did something happen to the boy? Was it my fault? did my father kill the boy? Like, the last thing I remember
Yeah.
was, I'll kill him.
Right.
And then I never saw him again.
Right. Right.
Right. So as a child, it was, oh my goodness. One, maybe I shouldn't speak the truth, right? Because
Yeah.
bad things will happen to people
Right.
and I'll be responsible.
Yeah.
And then also, my family never, I don't remember ever having that conversation with my mother, father, or sister again
Right.
after
That
that moment.
right. That's where it becomes the big hiccup in families, right? So the tough part for a lot of families is that they think, and a lot of friendships think, well, if I keep talking about these things, I might just be bringing up awkward, difficult moments for someone. And the truth is, as we know, besides just holding space with people that love us, it's best to keep the conversation alive because it starts to have more light and you start to understand it as just another event versus such an event that one cannot speak about it, right? This is
Yeah.
you want to get away from unspeakable events.
Well, don't they say, and maybe I'm not going to even say this as eloquent as I'd like the more that you can recall a situation and have less emotion attached to it, there's that real healing that is taking place.
Yeah,
It's that's the place you want to get to where
sure.
there is no emotion that is moving through you as you're discussing this traumatizing experience.
That's right. That's right.
Because
And it's
then
not
you
because you
think,
become disillusioned or disassociative or whatever things like this genuine healing that comes. And it does come, and it does come through many ways, like, through practices, through conversation, through trusted people that you're sharing with. Uh, Time helps because if you're using time well and you're not just staying in a kind of, stuck routine with it. Um, it's key. I mean, I got lucky in the sense that when my uncle died, right, my grandparents, it was their son. My my grandparents never stopped talking about Jimmy, who was my Uncle Jimmy. Like, Jimmy was just constantly spoken about. So we knew as boys, little boys, I was young and my brother was 2. We knew we could always talk about Uncle Jimmy. So we'd go to the grave with my grandmother and we'd say, "That's your son, right, Nan?" And she'd say, "It's
yeah.
my son. That was my youngest son." And we'd be like, "He died young, Nan?"
Oh,
And it was like you were allowed to have this conversation. And they would pull
yeah.
out pictures and show old family videos. And honestly, I remember the last weeks of my grandmother's life, we were still talking about Jimmy, you know, still talking about Jimmy. It was just a natural part of life. And because of that, I just watched specifically my grandmother do much better with living because of that. She decided to love a lot more because of that loss than to crawl up in a ball and just die. She always kept him in conversation. She always kept him in her, on her lips and in her heart of communication, and literally allowed everyone else to speak with him as well. And I think my brother and I probably talked about him. We were some of the people who talked about him the most. Certainly I would have because I was a little bit older. Because we would always go to the grave with her. We would always go to the grave. So I was indoctrinated into, like, death comes early, death comes unexpected, and don't be afraid to have a conversation about it, even after the person's gone. So that became an easier thing, which kind of brings us back to the kind of echoed experience that you had at when your mom passed away. I had already been kind of trained by that time. By the time you were 27 and I was whatever the hell years I was older than that. And all of a sudden I'm able to have this conversation. I know this routine. I know this story. I've seen people go through this already. I know how to hold this space. I've been a part of it. So I'm
Hmm.
really, the irony is like, I was shocked how relaxed I was around your difficulty. But when time went by, I went, well, of course I was. I was already indoctrinated in that, into a family that lost someone young. And we never stopped talking about that person. And ironically, you and I don't either. Like, whenever we do have those rare conversations, we always talk about your mom, one way or another. She always comes up some way, you know?
Well, remember, I mean, that was really our soul contract. She's so much part of it.
Of course.
Her soul is like whatever contract. And I look at it now and I'm finally, years later, able to really see the gift that I was given. It was almost like this, in a sense, like she was like this sacrificial lamb for my
That's
soul
right.
to continue on onto my journey.
That's right.
So I can really move into my soul's path.
That's right.
And so rather than being angry, right,
Right.
I had to come and be thankful and grateful because
Yes.
you know me, I wouldn't be doing this work now if that hadn't happened the way that it exactly happened.
Yes. Yeah.
And then you were positioned where you were very strategically.
Yeah.
So you're so much part of that soul contract.
Yeah. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Yeah. I remember feeling a little bit bummed because I hadn't met your mother yet, but that was kind of on the table, right?
You were going to meet her
I know.
soon.
And then she passed away and I was like, I'm really kind of bummed about that. And I remember like I didn't want to like bring that up too much in conversation because it seemed awfully selfish considering, what you were going through. So I don't think I voiced it as much, but I remember being quite bummed about it. But also understanding in time, total agreement with you there that I would have had to say, okay, right. So you do this, I'll do this, which brings me to something that I want to share something before we close out that I think is interesting. An interesting
Yeah.
idea that came in my journaling recently.
I love it. And just so you know, I already know what we're doing for part 2.
Okay, that's
So
good.
guys, stay tuned.
That's great. I love it. So here's what's interesting for me, and this started to appear in my journals, and I thought, I wonder, I don't know this to be a truth or not, but if the whole playing field of events always exist, that I already believe. So let's just start there. I already believe that we can quantum into the future and grab information if we want to. Some people spend way too much in trauma healing and they spend a lot of their energy in the past. And one of the things I recommend to people do is like, if they can get quiet, whether that's a walk, it doesn't have to be lotus position meditating. Sometimes that's a walk. Sometimes that's a routine. You're on a treadmill at the gym and you just have music on and you're in a meditative state. You're in a rhythm and start to bring your consciousness forward, go outward in time, go much further down the road and start grabbing from your future self, because your future self is already in a much, much, much better place, especially if you're going through something difficult, right? And so go and look at the future self. And you'll see that the quantum forward is also there. It's there. These events are there. If anyone's had an NDE that's listening to this, they already know. They've been shown, some NDEs are shown events that will occur in their future. And this is going to happen. And you're going to have 2 children. And so it's been marked. It's been planned. And your spirit guides are showing you these pre-events because they exist already in time. So let's go to something really, really, really that I haven't heard anyone talk about, but it's been coming up a lot in my journaling. Because of the work I do, because I am an acting teacher, and I've been doing that for 20 plus years here in New York City, specifically just that teaching along with other things. But often, let's say a Tara or another woman named Susan or another woman named Karen will come in and they'll play the same part. So let's take the role of Hamlet, because everyone knows the role of Hamlet more or less for conversation. Now, we know many people have played Hamlet. We know that Laurence Olivier played Hamlet. We know Jude Law played Hamlet. We know Mel Gibson played Hamlet. We know that Ethan Hawke has played Hamlet, etc., etc., etc. The list goes on. And some women have played Hamlet, right? So we know that Hamlet is a role that gets picked up, played, and the person finds their way through Hamlet. And all the events of Hamlet are marked. All these events are marked. They're played out. Like, this event will happen. Your father's going to be killed. The ghosts are going to come to you, tell you that he's killed. You're going to get back home and find out that your uncle's now king and married to your mother. And you're going to see all these events are happening in Hamlet. So here's my hypothesis. I have no answer on this. It's only hypothesis. Am I the first person to play John Dapolito? Are you the first spirit to take on Tara Magalski's journey? Do we, like players on a stage, say, oh, I want to try that role, and come into an incarnate stage where we play out and design the play, but the play has always been there to be designed. And from production to production to production of Hamlet, there's nuances, there's tiny bits shaved and shaped, but it's still the story of Hamlet. But it's through Mel Gibson's eyes, and it's through Jude Law's eyes, so what happens is we start to realize, hey, wait a second. I am not my psychology. My psychology is here. I am that which is present and aware of this psychology. I'm not my thoughts. I'm not these feelings. I know that they are here, but I am that which is aware of these things. So that which is aware can pick up and animate all that is. And so in my journaling, I've been asking, am I the first person to play John Dapolito? Am I the first spirit to play John Dapolito, or have there been many spirits here? And that really the spirit is just taken on this performance in the world and what's to come.
Gosh, just piggybacking on what I was saying before, because this is something that's relevant. It's happening right now. And this is tying back to the markers. So I have this thing happen to me at 5 years old, right?
Right.
This cover up comes into play.
That's right.
Then I have this working meditation, right? Which we found out. And what's so cool about this, guys, is that this really helps you to find out which roles you should be playing, because that is where you'll become the most alive authentically. Like, and where you're better at explaining this, but from what I understand through your teachings was, this is like your gold, your thematic chord, right? This is the theme in which your soul is just going to just love to play, because it's like, it knows this.
That's right.
As I'm sitting here prior to us going live today, I tell you about the situation with my neighbors, right? And I'm like, and the full moon and all this stuff happening, and the boats going in and trespassing, right? And I had such a violation and such a trespassing at a young age of me physically. And I look at where I am now and I said, wow, I chose this home next to this association where these boats are all over my property. Why is it triggering me so much?
Right.
And, yesterday on the full moon, really getting in touch with the full moon in Scorpio and the shadow self and self-reflection, I was like, so this is another marker. And then I say to myself, okay, well, the more you know, the more that you can make empowered decisions.
Right.
I unconsciously chose to put myself in a situation that is now making me relive these injustice feelings that I had. So when these people come on my yard or in front of my house, it's as if they're violating the 5-year-old me. Because my husband said to me, you're taking this into the house. Like, you're really you're bringing this energy and it's very intense. And I said, well, let me explain to you why. I've sat with myself and I understand now why this is hitting me so deeply and making me feel so unsafe. And I explained it to me. It was like, oh, okay. I said, now, he goes, okay, I understand now it's all full circle. He said, you see, so my question is, yes, I can make a decision to try and let it go. That's not going to change the fact that they are all over me and trespassing all the time. Right.
Right.
They think that they have the legal access to do that. Right. do I sell my house? Like, I go through all these questions.
Right.
Like, well, how does one remedy this? Because I don't want to be a person that's stuck in a loop.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be that person that is like a victim of their reality that they're projecting or creating.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I want to be able to ascend this.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we're talking, I'm just like, wow, like, here's this meditation that's happening on the subconscious.
Yeah.
And I fully, truly believe that it's affecting my fertility.
That's
I
big.
deeply, deeply believe, and I told my husband this, I said, I deeply believe that living here is affecting, and I don't know, like maybe I just have to bring that into light to release it. But like, this is why it's so deep for me.
Yeah.
It's not just.
No, I get it. I get it.
And like, I literally had a neighbor trespass physically, come through my gate 4 or 5 times unannounced
Yeah.
when I'm home alone.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow,
Yeah.
what is this
Yeah.
that's showing up in the field? Right.
Well, that's,
And
you're
there's that
talking
little
about,
girl, right? Right.
yeah, you're talking about echoed ground zero stuff. So why do things echo in our lives? So it's really kind of important to understand why something would echo in the first place. So echoes only happen because a person's unhealed or unlearned, right? So if I haven't acquired the wisdom on the echo just, we're all on kind of these spherical loops, right? And the loop comes back around and asks us, how much did you learn? How much wisdom was acquired on that loop? You know? And when an echo comes and, like you say, it starts to bring you into real heightened emotions and feelings, um, and let you know, like, oh, this particular echo needs attention because it's become, like your husband said, you're bringing it into the house, and so it's alive. It's still alive on you, right? And these violators, which is echoing your ground zero, which was a violation of your physical trust with someone, and you got blindsided, and it was not something you saw coming. And these are the same things here, people feeling like they have the right, no matter what. So your property is an extension of yourself, and it becomes this thing. So then the question begs, okay, so this echo is here, and what's it here to teach me, right? Now, one doesn't have to get wild about it, but one could say, well, I'm going to, with as much presence as I possibly can, get involved in understanding that these people need to understand that this is trespassing. It is my property. And I do need to keep them off the property and trespass for a bunch of different reasons. And my asking isn't working. My explaining the situation isn't working. And I've tried other methodologies, but they're not working. And so then it comes down to, well, how do I want to go about this, right? And so there's multiple layers. There's, what I'm learning spiritually, and then what do I want to do about the externals? Because I don't want people to feel comfortable that they're on property and that they can just come through gates and stuff like this. I don't feel comfortable with that message. I don't feel comfortable with that kind of trespassing. That's invasive. My husband's at work. I'm living by myself, and Gracie doesn't seem like she's going to know what to do in the moment, right? And so here I am.
Oh no, you don't know my Gracie.
She's
that little thing.
Well, good thing she's got some bark on her. So then it leads
She's
us
like
to,
me, John. Humans are like their animals.
I get it, but I have a good sense of Gracie. So then what it comes down to is, and I think this is such an important thing you're bringing up, is how do I want to deal with this spiritually? And how do I want to deal with this on the physical plane? And they're not always the same thing. They're not always the same thing. It was very, very important for me at a certain point in my life to not be in my father's life because he was such a mess. And my mother did the right thing on the physical plane. He's drinking, he's drugging, he's in and out of jail. This is not good for my boys. My boys, that's not going to go well. I don't want them around that, and that's that. So she, at the physical level, she did the right thing. At the spiritual level, I needed healing. I
Yeah.
needed to get back into, I needed to have experiences with my father to start to heal. So at a certain point when I was 27, actually 26, I reached out to my father. That's how my sister contacted me when I was 27. And I started to kindle a relationship with him. And he passed away when I was 28, 2 years later. And thank God I did reach out when I was 26, because he would be gone very, very quickly. And so there's two things happening, right? And I think it's very, very important for us to realize that they're not necessarily how we live on the physical plane is our same answer on the spiritual plane. And we have to really compartmentalize at times and recognize, you know, when my child is screaming at me, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you, because we're not letting them have that third ice cream. We know the big picture, right? But the child doesn't know the big picture. We know that we're doing this for their health, for their spirit, what's good for them, so on and so forth. And they can't see the big picture. So they're acting out on the physical plane, but we're dealing with them on a deeper spiritual plane about good health, what it means to live well and how to live well, and presenting them with healthy boundaries, so on and so forth. So I don't think there's anything wrong with doing this twofold. I hear this and I say, well, at the physical plane, these people that are trespassing on property, they need to be notified, right? Somehow through authorities that
Which we've done.
this
Yeah.
this is too much, it's too far, and actually you've misinterpreted the property boundaries, and that needs to be addressed. And then there's your spiritual work, where you say to yourself, what do I want to do now that this echo's come back in my life? What do I want to do with this echo on the spiritual level? How do I want to address that violation when I was how old were you? 5?
I was 5.
5. And at 5, how do I want to deal with that? How do I want to come to understand that? What do I want to know about that? What else is there for me to learn? What wisdom is there for me to acquire with that? Oh, I didn't know how to take care of myself then, but now I do. Oh,
You know what, John? I knew how to take care of
you
myself.
did
That's
take care of yourself.
did take
Interesting.
care
Yeah.
of.
But I mean, you didn't know
Interestingly,
how to take care of yourself in this sense. You put
motion.
yourself in the situation, right? Had you had more wisdom, you'd have been like, I'm not sure Tommy's basement or wherever it was is the right place, because Tommy's a little off, right? So when it started to go wrong, you were like kung fu and you got yourself out of it. Tommy didn't know what hit him. Like, this was karate chop, boom, boom, boom. And Tommy was like, whoa, I didn't know I had a ninja, and you ran back home. But what I mean is, like, I don't mean to say that you didn't take care of yourself. But I mean, the wisdom not to put yourself in a situation that, like, ooh, that might be dangerous. He's an off boy. I don't know what's going on there. And you were too young to even know what sexuality was at that time,
Yeah.
you know?
Oof. It's
So then
all
you say,
so
so then
interesting.
you say to yourself, okay, I'm making up the boy's name, but I'm saying it's basically you got a lot of Tommies running around on the property who think that they have this right to run around on the property. And so then there's the physical plane of the legal, and that gets dealt with. Good. Well, that's that. But now what do I want to do spiritually? What do I wish to do? Do I want to walk around with a bunch of hatred? Do I want to let a bunch of resentment, a bunch of judgment, a bunch of anxiety? Do I want to bring this to my dog? Do I want to bring this to my husband all day long? Like, what do I want to do here? Am I comfortable enough with recognizing that there's still some healing for me in terms of me recognizing through experience, do I have people in my life that I trust? Do I trust myself in this situation? Am I the type of person who puts herself in dangerous situations any longer? And you'll realize you don't. You realize right away, you know what? I don't put myself in dangerous situations. It's not fun not to be listened to. It's not fun not to be heard. Um, Tommy, so to speak, wasn't hearing me. Tommy wasn't listening. Tommy didn't want to stop. And I had to kind of kung fu my way out of the situation, literally. And so these people aren't listening either. But who do I wish to be on multiple levels? And I think this is the only way to go about life, is to recognizing things are happening on multiple playing fields. They're not just
Yeah.
happening as this one spiritual rule for situations. Sometimes it comes on multiple levels. And recognizing that is a very, very important thing, which you've already done. And no one, here's the irony, no one can offer up the answer. At the physical plane, there's some smart things, but at the spiritual plane, the answer is so unique unto us.
Yeah.
This is where the tools come in and the train comes in, so to speak, the things we talked about earlier. What is my tool? When people have trespassed me and I've gotten trespassed, like my goodness or my kindness has often given people this unconscious license where they think they can just kind of take advantage of me. And that gets my hairs up, because I like to lead with a lot of integrity in life. And so if I feel like someone's not operating from integrity and they're crossing me, I can have a little
Yeah.
bit of bite in my tongue. Like I can get a little bit, snippy. I can get like Gracie, like a little, I can start to get like this. But I recognized I didn't like the sound of my voice when I was doing that. I recognized I didn't like how I was biting back, that I thought I was biting back too strong, that I was coming
Yeah.
on too hard, too fierce, too much. And I recognized that was happening because I let buildup happen. And I
Yeah.
was building and I was building and I was building and I was building. And then all of a sudden, if I started barking, I felt I had the right to avalanche in that bark, where I was like, and now I'm avalanching and I'm really kind of out of control. So one of the things I did for myself is to recognize, address it in its budding place,
Yeah.
vocalize it, journal it, talk it out. What do I wish to learn from this? What is here for me to know? Find the answers. Do not let this accumulate. The accumulation turns you into a person you don't like. And that was something that I did to address some of my own barking, which is, I think, normal when you're being trespassed, when the person's like, we're auric fields. So when someone's
I just want you to I want you to just see what just happened
what happened?
while all we were talking about this.
What happened?
President of the association that just got my lawyer letter, and I've sent them a note saying, our boat's coming in. It'll be blocking all your boats in 3 days. Don't know why in 2.5 years you're not listening to the lawyer letters. Think you actually think you can do this? He pulls down the driveway, comes down, stands on the dock that's next to us, looks at the situation, gets in his car and drives out.
Well,
Literally, we called him into the field.
talk about kismet. I mean, talk about, like, it's here, it's in the ether, it's in
Working on the planes. We talk about it. He rolls down. I see him.
multiple levels, and here's the thing is, like, everybody, the toughest thing to learn is that being a spiritual being does not mean I get walked over.
Yeah, no.
Being a loving and caring and sensitive human being does not mean I'm a doormat. It's not what it means. Sometimes your bark back at someone is part of the contract. It's part of the contract. It's like, hey, you're not listening when I talk calmly, so and all of a sudden, like, oh, right,
Exactly.
and then it's sometimes that's the deal. It's not like I just sit in a kind of serene place and I'm perfuming the spontaneous now from grace. Yes, but sometimes that perfume, we know this from an acting point of view, that sometimes the best things that happen in the play are when a person finally speaks their truth to another person. And we as an audience, we can't stop crying. We can't stop engaging. The person needed to hear it. They never heard that before. They didn't know. They didn't understand. This is part of it. Like, We have to
Yeah.
stop choosing our colors and saying, this is a bad color, this is a good color. It's just like, listen, it's just a color. It's
Mm-hmm.
just a color. And the life is meant to have a big Crayola crayon box, bunch of colors in it. And you don't have to be selective and just kind of be one noted in the world. That's not really human. You're here to experience an array of experiences and colors, acquire that wisdom as you go along. You don't put the burden of do everything perfectly, do everything. The same thing with the actor. I said, don't do it perfectly. Try to ruin the scene. What do you mean try to ruin it? Yeah, just come at the scene, try to ruin it. And they can't ruin it because they're really professional actors. They don't even know how to ruin a scene. See, you don't even know how to ruin it. See, it's like they don't. And the same thing with life. The truth is, you don't really know how to ruin your life anymore. Like, you got past a big event. I got past big events. Other people listening have gotten past big events. You don't know how to ruin your life anymore. It's not even of interest to ruin your life any longer because you've become like the professional actor. You've acquired some wisdom along the way. Like, oh, I don't really want to ruin this.
Yeah.
I don't really want to ruin it.
John, the only reason I have to cut this short is because I have to pee.
Yeah, go pee. I have a meeting anyway
Oh,
at 2. I have a
no,
meeting
but
at 2:30.
we have not even gotten I have so much more that I want to discuss. So
Yeah,
for
there's a few
everyone,
things we need to get into. There's a few
we
things.
need, I have like a list of things
Yeah.
that we haven't even gone to.
Yeah.
God,
I want to
I want
get
to jump.
I want to get into there's one thing I want to get into too.
I want to get into stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm just sharing that with the audience. Guys, I got to pee. So we're got to stop for today.
Yeah.
And John has to go as well. But I want to ask you, you know what? I'm going to hold it. I'm going to hold this for the next time.
All right.
Because there's more. I have so much more. And, every time we do talk, we can go on for hours. And I do see these. I had a vision, John, today as we were doing this. I've been getting lots of visions lately. I'm going to speak this. I saw us co-hosting a podcast and I saw you on a podcast. I saw me there. I kind of saw that this was just not like a one-time series thing. Like it was maybe even a monthly drop. I don't know. I saw this as like an ongoing thing.
Yeah, I'd be open to that. That'd be fun.
Because there's so much to unpack, and I really feel that your work needs just more recognition. And that book that I keep telling you, like this book, this could maybe just be the beginning of like transcribing this, because the framework of this book that
you're one of the people, and people do get on me. They're like, you have to write this book. It's, as you can imagine, it's very difficult to write. Look, even this word seems arrogant, right? The acting niche phenomenon seminar is what it's actually called. So I remember thinking, oh my God, am I going to put this word phenomenon with this thing? But how it happened was a group of 12 people got together and they were like, you have to change the name of your seminar, because it was just called the Acting Niche Seminar. Actors Where You're Going, the Acting Niche.
Yeah, actors
right?
Where You're Going.
Right?
Yes.
So everyone was like, you got to change the title of this. You have to change, because they were going through experiences, right? They were having experience. And so 12 people got together actually at my apartment, which is not very big. So 12 people crammed in, grabbed some people on floors, seating, couches, everything. And they were trying to come up with what it should. They literally did this to me. This isn't something that I said.
Yeah.
You
need that push.
Well,
you need.
Maybe I do. Maybe I do. I don't know. I will say this. It's hard to write about phenomena.
But what I'm saying is, look at this amazing gift of technology. I'm writing this outline of my book right now. I'm having a hard time. Transcribe. We speak. You're a speaker.
Yeah,
like
totally. I hear you.
Transcribe, and then
I think you are correct. I'm not saying you're not correct. I think you're correct. Other people are correct. You know me. I like to do things well, Tara. I like to do things.
I know. And I do know you, and you like to go slow, and you're like, I get it. And I've always told you this. Now it's 17 years. Like, I was like, always want to just like throw you out there, like go in the front, like there's something where you're still like, you're not fully stepping into the front with
Maybe,
your work.
maybe it's true. I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe we just
I
need to.
feel like when I'm working, I'm stepping into that light, but it
Well,
could
you
be,
are for sure.
it
And
could
it's
be.
like the book tour, like the podcast. Like to me, knowing you so well for all these years, it's like, where's your podcast? Like, why am I not hearing from you regularly?
Yeah.
Why aren't you giving me these wisdoms, these droplets once a week? Just give it to me once a month.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, people are craving this and the time is now. And all we need is this. We just need to.
I will tell you what a little bit of it is I'm not as confident as I am as a person. Believe it or not, I don't live in a lot of spiritual arrogance. Like I don't live in this place where I think I have, I guess there's a part of me that says, I don't know if I have the answers for people. I don't mind when people come to me or ask me and blah, blah, blah. And I have lots to share because I've been down the rabbit hole, as you know, like the riddles of the world are not riddles of the world for me any longer. They were, and then they weren't. And I have a
Mhm.
lot to say about it, like a lot.
I know.
But I don't have arrogance in it. And that's part of the problem, to be honest with you. Like I don't have this part I agree with you 100% that there's a part of me that I step into it and offer it more. Step into it and offer it more. I even look, trust me, that's in my journals, it's in my journals. But there's so little of me that what's the word is like, I'm not looking for anything from it. Like
I know.
I do give this to people. I do offer it to people. My phone rings all the time. Can I walk you through a situation I'm in and get your
Yeah.
POV on it? Can I do? Yeah, no problem. And it's a lot of that, right? And I do that, and it comes very, very natural to me to do that. So you are correct in the sense that I do have to step into that light with a little bit more authority, where I say, you know what, own this more, take responsibility for it even more, get on board with it more, sit in a room. I do have a book that I have been writing. I will say this out loud, but it's a different book than people think. The
Mm.
book came to me years ago. I knew I was always going to write this book, and I started writing the book. And I don't overly talk about things that I write, but I'm deep enough into the book now where I know it's going to be finished. And then I thought, yeah, that might be one of my first platforms, and I might start doing other writing. And I agree with you. Nothing you're saying that I don't agree with. I think you're 100% correct. I'm either lazy or just things come in my time or whatever. It could be one of those.
No, I just think it's about divine timing. I know my gift is to create a platform and to share stories. And my gift is like that producer, that curator, the one that kind of brings it all together. It's my Virgo analytical mind that likes to, I've created this platform. I have a community. This feels like me sharing my gifts and then highlighting other people's gifts is the
Yeah,
most important
that's
thing to
good.
me.
It's really
How
beautiful.
can we share this information with others? How can
Yeah,
I bring healers together and facilitators and sages and wisdom seekers together and share knowledge? That's what I'm here to do,
yeah. Well,
right?
trust me,
Just create.
there's a big spiritual thing I want to talk about the next time we gather. A very big
Okay.
thing that I'd like to share.
I
But
love
that
it.
we'll leave that as a kind of cliffhanger.
Okay, let's leave it at the cliffhanger. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Today was very healing for me to just be with you
My
and
pleasure.
talk through it all. And I'm just so grateful and so
Well,
thankful
my
for
biggest
you.
thing is I just want to say, because I know you're in treatment right now, I just want to say, let's get this motherhood underway. I offer my
Yes.
prayer and my heart up to you, to the spirit that's coming into your life. I think it'll be a
Mm.
beautiful, beautiful, extraordinary experience for that person and for you and for Michael. And I wish you great, great success. And I hope it turns out to be twins.
Yay!
Double
I'll
it up.
take, I'll take whatever God is giving me.
I know, of course.
I'm unhealthy.
I'm being a little bit playful on the back of that.
Of course, but you know how it's like, oh, the name is this or this is that. Oh, you know what? I'm open. I've learned what it means to be really open. I will take whatever is given to me with the biggest, largest gratitude in my heart, because the struggle has been real.
The struggle's real, and what's interesting is I always knew in your energy. I was like, well, Tara's always gonna, like, I always knew you would be a mother. So I remember thinking like 3 years ago before we wrapped, oh wow, I'm gonna have to jump. I remember thinking like 3 years ago or so, like, oh, it's so strange that Tara never had a child. Like, she's supposed to be a mother. And I literally had that thought, but at that, I wasn't gonna call you up with that thought,
Like, what the hell? Why are
like,
kids?
I just had a thought.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, but it'll happen.
yeah,
It's
definitely going to happen.
Already there. It's always been in your auric field. It's never not been in your field. So motherhood is there.
Yes, I am now ready for this future self and to be pulling this down into the physical realm of the 3D. In this time and place right now is like where I really feel. And like I told you, I feel like I'm fully stepping into my life's work on a different, much deeper level. And it goes hand in hand with the birth of the business in a deeper way, and the birth of, not even the business, the life's work, the legacy, right? The legacy work that is going hand in hand to me with the birth of the spirit that's coming through.
It'll all happen. It's inevitable. All right. We're going to jump.
Okay.
Thank you all. Okay. Thank you to your people.
Just let everyone know really quickly where they can find you online, learn more about you. I'll put it in the show notes, but I want them to hear.
JohnDapolito.com. That's JohnDapolito.com. Tons there. And you can contact me through that as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Everybody.
Thank you. Have a good day. Good talking.
Great talking. Send you lots of love.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of Divine Lifestyles Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you get your episodes. If you really loved this episode, screenshot it and share it on social media. It will help us to continue to make an impact. With gratitude and love always, keep illuminating your path.